Hey, my name is Nicole, and this is Nick's Picks. Not necessarily all recommendations, things I would pick to recommend to someone, but I'm basically going to post a video every month and talk about the books that I picked to read that month. So these are my January picks. This is everything I've read in January. I am new to BookTube, so having said that, I just want to take a quick second to tell you a little bit about myself and what I like to read. I recently discovered BookTube and think it is awesome. I love reading reviews of books. Of course, I love shopping in a bookstore blindly and picking up everything and making all kinds of fun discoveries on my own, but it's nice when you get a recommendation from someone. And I love to read through like reviews when I hear about a book just to get a general consensus, obviously, on this was predictable, this kept my interest, I couldn't put it down, the characters were great, or stuff like that. So on BookTube, it's even better because it's one thing to read it, but when you actually hear someone talk about a book, it's more conversational. I feel like you definitely just get a better vibe for how they feel about the book, how passionate they are about it, and also about them, like just to see if that's somebody that you think you have similar taste to, the way they describe books, if that's something that you connect with. I will say that right now, my two favorite genres, what I read the most, would be either mystery and slash thriller or romance. Of course, I also love horror, as you can tell by my shirt, and also my favorite author of all time across all genres is Stephen King. And normally I like a very fast-paced book, a romance you get swept up in, or a mystery that you want to see what happens, but so it's a little surprising maybe that he's my favorite author, because any other Stephen King fan would tell you that the books are gigantic, almost all of them, and there is a lot going on. Like sometimes takes a very long time to get to the page turning, but it's a great journey. I always say every time I read a book of his, like my admiration for him grows by the word. Every single word in those gigantic books is so smart, funny, just well thought out, carefully crafted. I think I admire him so much as a writer. My whole life since I was a kid, I've loved to read and write. So I always appreciate things from that end too. And even in these videos, I don't plan on like bashing any books or saying anything was terrible, because tastes are very subjective. So I'm just going to let you know what, resonated with me, or if it didn't resonate with me, what I disliked, what I liked specifically. So again, if you have the same type of taste, maybe it would help you pick a book as well. So for mysteries, I would say some of my favorite authors would be definitely Frida McFadden. Recently discovered her and have read at least 10 books at this point and love every single one. Megan Moran's is very good. I love Leanne Moriarty, another one of my favorite authors. For romance, I'd say Christina Lauren and Colleen Hoover, Alexis Hall. Again, just admiring the storytelling there. So funny. I like laugh out loud. Alexis Hall, so great. I like graphic novels. Stephen King's son, Joe Hill. If you're into that kind of thing, a graphic novel, Basket Full of Heads. If you haven't read it, read it. Again, if you're into horror, gory horror. Also, the Heartbreaker series, those graphic novels I think are great. For romance, I pretty much like male-female or male-male. I've never read female-female. No judgments, nothing against that, but just as a personal preference, I like to be swept up in, falling in love with the character and finding things romantic, finding things sexy. And since I'm not, attracted to women, I find it hard to connect with that. So for male, female, I'm falling in love with the male, and for male, male, I'm falling in love with two males. So I love it. And probably my favorite, romance book would be Him. It is male, male. So if you are open to that, if you like to read that, definitely, I've read it twice. I've read the whole series and the spin-offs. That would be my biggest recommendation for that. And of course, Alexis Hall, like I said, boyfriend material, husband material. That's great. For thrillers, my favorite is probably Harlan Coben. He, keeps me guessing. I love all of his books. And again, Frida McFadden, definitely, those would be my biggest recommendations. for those authors. So that being said, personally, I'm 41 years old. I'm married. I have a 9-year-old daughter. So normally I'm not going to be talking about 7 books a month, but I did read 7 books in January because right now I'm on even more of a reading kick. I have my Christmas haul. I got 11 books for Christmas, so I was just very eager to dive in. And just any free second, I'm not, I love watching TV. I love listening to music, but right now I'm not like super invested in any kind of Netflix show or anything. So I'm just like every free second I'm, reading. So I did read 7 books in January. That's what we'll be talking about now. Going forward, it probably will not be that many, but we'll see. Again, so now let's get started. I guess the first book that I read, unfortunately, is not going to be a super high recommendation from me. I read I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. So for this book, I will say I read Foe by Ian Reid, and anybody that has read Foe, like me, would probably go into something like this thinking amazing. I can't wait. It's going to be the same thing. I did not find that to be the case. I actually think this might have been written first. I'm not sure. But I read Foe first. And Foe, to me, again, when you read a lot of mysteries and thrillers, there comes a point where there's only so many things they could do. And, you without even realizing it, without even looking at it from like a writer's perspective or anything like that, like, about the red herrings, I'm looking for a character that's kind of like remote enough that we forget about them, but significant enough that it would be a big deal if they're involved. And, you kind of know what to look for. So it's really, really important, like when you can surprise me. Like I feel like, wow, like if you take my breath away. And Foe did that. I really didn't see the end of that coming. That being said, like 2 pages in, I felt like I knew exactly what was happening with this book. And it's hard because when you read something, all I saw about this was shocking twist. You're never going to believe what happens. And when you go in knowing that, you just can't, even without trying, like it's not like I'm sitting there saying what could be going on. Like even without trying, you just can't help but kind of try to figure out what's going on and work it out, and you kind of like see what's coming because you just know it's coming. So I feel like for this book, basically the premise is you kind of open up on this couple in a car, and we're kind of just with them for the ride. They're going to visit his parents and meet them for the first time. So, I mean, the, significant other is going to meet the parents for the first time. And it's just the car ride and, when they get there and kind of just this whole thing. And again, I don't want to give any spoilers in these discussions, so I'm not going to say much more than that. But yeah, I felt like I kind of had it pegged like from the get-go. So if you're looking for, oh my God, this is a shocking twist, my opinion, it was not, at least for me. Also, I will say it was very philosophical. Now, in college, the one class I hated, the one class I really couldn't even stand like doing readings for was philosophy. It's not my thing. So if you like that, if you like, that's what this was. It was every other line, when they're talking to each other, whatever, it was just kind of thinking about things a certain way and going on and on. Probably very smart references. If I, even knew more about that stuff, I might even be more impressed, but it was very smart and a lot, like I said, a lot of delving into the mind and what's going on and all this kind of stuff. So to me, I find that stuff very boring. So even this book is so little. It was it was probably the longest of the books that I'm going to show you that I took to read, because I was just like getting through it. I'm not a fan of DNF, the not finishing a book. I know it seems like a waste of time if you're not into something to just say, well, why am I doing this? Let me put it aside. But that's not me. I'm OCD. And again, out of just respect for the author and the fact that I'm in it and just wanting to at least see how it plays out. Like I don't often abandon a book once I'm significantly into it. So I stuck it out, saw what happened. Again, it was not a huge twist to me. and the philosophy part of it just kind of led the whole story to be a little bit on the boring side for me. So that's what I'll say about that. So this was not to me a page turner. It was not a huge twist. I would not recommend that book if you have similar tastes to mine. The next book that I read was The Coworker by Frida McFadden. Unfortunately, again, I'm not going to say that I didn't like it, because I definitely enjoyed the book. I found out from a friend about The Housemaid over this last summer. So I'm new to Frida McFadden. When she recommended it and I started looking it up, apparently The Housemaid was a huge deal. That's what she's known for. So I bought that. And I also, just in browsing all of her books, I was at a bookstore at the time, when I was looking for her, and I picked up The Teacher. So with The Teacher and The Housemaid, and that's how I started. And I loved The Teacher even more than the Housemaid series. The Teacher is probably still my favorite book of what I've read so far. But I've read all of the Housemaid books at this point, which are great. I've read The Inmate, The Boyfriend, loved them. Never Lie, I thought was very good. This one was the first one that kind of wasn't like super duper, like, oh my God, amazing to me. I would give all of the books I've read probably 4 to 5 stars, except for this one of hers. So the premise of this book is that there's a woman, Dawn, that works at this company, and she's kind of new there, and she's very strange. And then there's Natalie, who kind of sits in the cubicle next to her, and she's like the superstar worker. She's popular there. She's, sells the most stuff, so she's, well liked by the company and the boss and all that. And Dawn goes missing, and Natalie's the one that discovers that she's missing, and it kind of just, again, no spoilers, goes from there. There's an investigation and blah, blah, blah. Part of what I think I didn't like about this book was the structure, because basically it's first person, but we get Natalie's perspective, and it alternates between that and emails from Dawn. So Dawn is missing, so we're not hearing from her in the moment, but we read these emails that she's been writing in the time leading up to the disappearance to her friend. And they're very long emails. Like her chapters are the emails. So it goes on and on and on. And I am fully a fan, even myself, of like using emails and texts and, all that kind of stuff to tell a story. But it's very hard when it's like an email here or there, fine. But when most of the book, like, there's so much, an email is just structured differently than like writing. You're not like, necessarily hearing about the weather and descriptive things about what's going on, and it's not like real-time dialogue, and I can't explain it. Like, I just feel like it's just a different, like, I think that might have been part of what was a little bit annoying to me, like having to read so many of those emails. They shed a lot of light. We definitely needed what was in those emails, especially when we find out what's going on at the end. Like, they are significant, but I think that might have been part of why this wasn't like, oh my God, like, let me get to the end of this. In terms of the surprise factor, it was definitely there. Certain things you might kind of like figure out a little bit earlier on than you'd hope to, but even, what's great, even, there's always like something else to discover, like a little bit later with Frida. So, I would say that that's good, but I would definitely say she has a million books. I myself have only read, I think, 9 of them. So if you're in the bookstore, like looking through all of her books saying, what's my next Frida McFadden book? And you have it between this and something else, I would probably go with this something else. I'm not saying don't read it, especially if you're a fan of hers. But it's just not like high. Of the 9 books I've read, it's number 9 so far. So yeah, that's how I feel about that. The next book I read, If He Had Been With Me, by Laura Nolan. This book, it was a very good book. I knew going into it, as you will, even just reading, what it's about and, any reviews that you read without like spoilers, even just reading the beginning, because it's one of those things where they give you a little bit of the story in the beginning, like that didn't happen yet, so you kind of know what you're going towards. So the scene that plays out in the beginning, something bad happens. And normally I'm not up for a sad book, I will say that. I gotta be in the mood. And any review that you read of this is like heart-wrenching. I was bawling. Everybody's like, so affected by this book. And there's also in the beginning, again, not a spoiler, just it says it right in the beginning, there's a content warning. This book includes depression, death, suicide, and pregnancy. So you're getting into something heavy going in. What I will say, and in terms of it being a romance, like you might think, as I did initially before I read what it was about and some of the reviews, I thought like, oh, this is a book of like what could have been, kind of thing. Like I didn't realize there was like tragedy involved, but it's not like a lighthearted romance or, just kind of boy that got away in like a fun way. You're leading up to kind of something bad happening. So that being said, I still read it, and I will tell you, one of the biggest reasons I read it is because look at how beautiful this book is. You can't feel it, but it is like so nice. It feels nice. It's got red pages. It's got like a quote here. It has one of those like built-in bookmark thingies, like a ribbon. And it has pictures that are like amazing and like part of the story. Even inside here, look at this cover. This is a beautiful book. I wanted to hold it for a while. So that alone, I was like, I need to hold this in my hands for a little while. And this, in general, I am not like a Kindle person or, anything like that. I won't even read like on my iPad. I'm not saying I never will, but very rare. I love my books. I love collecting them. I love holding them. I'm one of those, I need the hard copy. This took it even a step further because this is so beautiful and so fun to hold. Look at the back. It's a beautiful book. The pages, the heart. So this book had a couple of different covers. There's one with a girl like looking in a puddle, and there's probably, I think the most popular one is like, I think it's like a black book cover with like a crushed kind of lollipop, heart lollipop like this. And then they released like this special edition. So marketing does work because I needed to pick this book up and I needed to read it just because it was so beautiful. And that being said, I put myself in the sad mindset. I knew what was coming. I did not cry. I'm not a quick cry. Even with that, it stayed with me. I was, thinking about what happened. It was heart-wrenching. I will definitely get on board with that. But I think you can handle it, especially because it's coming. Like as you're reading it, again, like I said, the very first, before we get into the book itself, they do like Frida McFadden does, where you get like a little snippet of later on in the book, so something happens. You don't know exactly what. It was kind of a little surprising to find out certain things about what happened. And the premise is that Autumn and Finney are best friends since forever. Their moms were best friends and they live like next door to each other, so they grew up like family, like brother and sister. They spend holidays together. They even eat like dinner together. So they were very close. And then of course, typical, they become teenagers, things maybe change a little bit, and they end up kind of like drifting apart. And in high school they're dating other people. That's kind of what we're reading about. Autumn's with Jamie, and Finney's with someone too, and it's all from Autumn's perspective. So we're kind of just reading about how she feels about him, about everything, about life. She got friends in high school. It's a typical like coming of age book, everything that's going on in high school. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to reveal anything else. But again, you kind of know the sad stuff's coming. It's very well written. I will say I definitely enjoyed the book. Will I read it again? Like people say, is this a reread? No. Again, no fault of the book. It's just once is enough for me. What I will probably read, but I'm not like running to the bookstore to get it. I found out there's another book. I think it's called "If Only I Had Told Her," from Finney's perspective. So it'd be the same story from his perspective. And having read it, I would find that interesting. I feel like I probably would pick that up and read that at some point. And that kind of is like reading the book again, but hopefully it'll be completely different because we're going to find out all this other stuff that was going on that maybe we didn't know from his perspective. So I would definitely recommend this book. Go into it knowing that it's sad if you're not, and that it's not like a super romance. Like I wouldn't even like categorize this as like a romance. It's not graphic. You know, more. It takes a very long time to even like kind of get into that stuff. It's there a little bit, but it's more. It's a deeper romance. It's not like that surface when you're looking for a romance novel and you're looking for smut and you're looking for or anything. Like it's not that. It's a very serious book, and again, just it was well written. It was definitely a well written book, but know that it is sad going in. Next we have The Housemaid's Wedding by Frida McFadden. So there are 3 books in the Housemaid series, and this is like a little short story. It's very short. Takes like a second to read. I want to say it's like 70 something pages. Yeah, 74 pages. It was a quick read. Very good. And I will say what I love about Frida McFadden, like one of the things that really makes you like appreciate the way she can twist things and everything, is because she does, like I said, that thing in the beginning where she gives you a little snippet of something that's happening later, but it's so out of context that you don't really know what's going on. And this was the best example of that to me. So kind of like kept you really like, you thought you were waiting for something, and it just, I don't know. It's very good. So it's basically, if you've read The Housemaid, I don't want to like spoil The Housemaid, but I feel like any Frida McFadden fan, or again, if you've read that, you kind of know it's about Millie. Millie's the housemaid in the first book. And the subsequent books kind of, you know, after that situation ends, we follow her to other things. And she does get married along the way. I won't say to who, just in case you haven't read it. But, and the third book, she's already married. So we never actually see her getting married. So this is kind of like a placeholder, like in between the second and third book, to kind of show you that little situation. So it's really, the whole thing takes place the day of her wedding. It's like a one-day thing, very quick read. Definitely worth it. And I would probably read it at the end. Like I know sometimes when people write like prequels or just something like that kind of explains something that you already read about, like they always say you can read it in order, or you know, I like to read things as they're written when it comes to a series. So to me, I would still read the 3 Housemaid books as is, and then kind of read this as the end, just for that fun little extra taste into her life. I don't think you have to read this before the 3rd book. You can, it doesn't spoil anything in the 3rd book, but I kind of liked even reading the 3rd book because like it references a couple of things that you already like kind of know about, and that's kind of fun. And I would probably definitely say, you know, read the other 3 and then read this. Next, we have Verity by Colleen Hoover. Again, this is like a special edition, and it includes like an extra chapter or epilogue at the end. And I never read it. This was the first time I'm reading it in general, so I read it as is in this edition. Colleen Hoover writes romance, but this is a little bit more, there is romance in it, but it is more of a, almost like a mystery kind of thriller kind of thing. Like you don't really know what's going on. There's some secrets. The idea is Verity Crawford is a famous author, and she had some type of accident to where she's not able to finish the books in her series. So her husband Jeremy works with her publisher or whatever to hire Lowen, another author that's going to kind of finish the series. And in order to do that, she's got to kind of stay at Verity and Jeremy's house for a little while, going through her office and her notes and all that stuff. And while she's doing that, she comes across an autobiography that Verity wrote that nobody has seen, and she doesn't know if it was intended for anyone to see it. So, and it really sheds light on like what's might be going on, and now it's like, oh my God, like, you know, you gotta, and then there's some twists, and you know, the end, I don't want to say too much, but you kind of like really caught up in, you're reading parts of the autobiography, and then you're also reading like real time with Lowen and Jeremy in the house. And you never really like kind of know what's going on, like all the way up until the end. You don't really know what's going on. I will say the part that was added, I almost might have liked it without that if I didn't read that part. Because I don't know if I love what happened in that part. And again, I can't say too much without spoiling it, so I won't. But yeah, I don't know. If you've read this, definitely worth reading that extra part. Just why not? It was written, you should read it. But if you're going to read it for the first time, again, I would definitely suggest reading it. But I feel like just personally, I don't know if I like it better if it would have ended like it initially did or with that extra part. Because I don't know if I liked, you know, what it said about the one of the characters, what happened in that other part. It kind of, well, I can't really say, but yeah. So, you know, overall though, it was a good book, kept me reading, wanted to see what was going on. I would definitely recommend the book. Next we have The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. So this book, was not one of the books I got for Christmas, but I had to kind of stop everything and buy it because in watching BookTube and hearing about a lot of thrillers that people like, this kept coming up, and apparently it was like, you know, crazy twist, you're not, you know, gonna see it coming and all this stuff. So the premise is that Alicia is an artist, and one day she comes home and shoots her husband Gabriel in the head 5 times and then does not speak a word after that. And she's admitted into some kind of psychiatric facility. And then Theo, who's a psychotherapist, is very intrigued by her case. So he ends up getting a job at that facility and trying to work with her to get her to speak and to try to find out, you know, what happened and why she did what she did. So definitely mystery, kept you thinking about it, kept you going. I will say I figured something out a bit sooner than I'd hoped. But even knowing that, it was still like a shock at the end, like something that happened. So I would definitely say this is good for somebody, you know, looking for a shock. You'll probably definitely, yeah, you'll definitely get a shock. Theo is a good character. It does get a little frustrating that the other thing, like the Frida McFadden book I was talking about, we read a lot of diary entries from Alicia. So she doesn't speak, but we do see some insight into her before this happened through the diary entries, which I didn't mind. And, you know, they were, you know, short. They weren't as long as the, you know, the other thing where I was saying where it was like a ton of long emails. But we get some insight into her through the diary entries. There's all different characters introduced. We do see some of Theo's personal life, what he's got, you know, he's got something going on with his wife, and we hear about that. And like I said, you might figure something out a little bit sooner than you hope, but even if you do, I don't think you're going to have it all figured out until the very end. So I would definitely recommend this. Did take me a little while to read it. I don't know if it was like super, oh my God, I gotta keep reading. I did really want to know what was going on, but you know, in terms of how long the chapters were, how it was written, how it was dragged out, it did take a little while. But once you're, especially towards the end, you just kind of like need to see what's going on, and you'll read it. So I would definitely recommend this book. And finally, the last book that I read is One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. So this book I've had for like a really long time and just haven't picked up. But again, I was seeing a lot of people talking about this, so I'm like, let me finally read this. I will say it took a little while to get into. What happens right away. So it starts off with 5 kids get detention, and one of them dies during detention. And the person that dies was running like a gossip site that would reveal like secrets about everybody at the school. And the 4 people he was in detention with, he was just about to reveal something about all of them. So it's kind of like, you know, who might have done this to shut him up? Is it one of the people in detention? Did somebody frame the people in detention so that, you know, they could get away with it and give people with motive? You don't know. This is told from 4 different perspectives. And the only, let me just say, I liked the book. I would recommend the book. It was definitely a well-written book. It was humorous. It was perfect. The surprise was great. Again, you might think things a little bit or whatever, but it plays out well, and it keeps you guessing for a long time. I will say what the negatives for me about the book was that I wasn't like turning the pages till a bit further in. And part of the reason for that, I think, is that the perspectives that it's written from. So we have 4 people, 2 girls, 2 guys. There's Bronwyn, who's like, you know, the brains. She's, you know, the really smart girl. And then there's Addie, who's like the popular girl dating the jock. And then there's Cooper, who like is a jock. But he's a nice guy, and he plays baseball, like trying to get a scholarship kind of baseball. And then there's Nate, who's like the, you know, bad boy, reminiscent of the Breakfast Club, that whole vibe, meant to be, you know. So what I didn't love is that when you do first person and you do so many different perspectives, it really is important to know who you're hearing from. And I just feel like, especially in the beginning, there was a couple of times where I had to kind of like just stop a second and say, wait, who am I reading right now? I don't feel like it was like distinctive enough. And it's weird because they're 4 very different personalities, and, you know, the stuff that they're talking about is different because they start off, they're not friends. So they're all even just interacting with different characters. So when you're interacting with these people, you know, you're in this person's head and that kind of thing. But for some reason, I just felt like it was not enough of a distinction, especially early on in their minds. I feel like I myself have written things from different perspectives. I write third person sometimes, so that it doesn't matter whose chapter we're on. You know, you're still saying so and so said. There's really no confusion there. But if you do first person, I do like that. I like when we alternate, maybe in a romance where we see this person's view of it, and then the next chapter is that person's view of it. You know, Gone Girl, we see different views of it. Like, I just feel like I'm not against that. I like that. But this was 4 different people, so it's a lot to keep track of, and it really has to be distinctive. And I felt like the only person that was thinking and doing things super distinctively was Nate, the bad boy. That's a very distinctive personality, and I felt like that did come through with everything. So I was never really questioning when I was reading Nate. But the other 3, even between the genders, like I still was like, wait a minute, who am I reading right now? So that would be my one little, you know, annoyance, so to speak. And again, as you get to know them more and interact with them more, you kind of do get into their nuances a bit better, and that doesn't happen towards the end of the book. But in the beginning, at least, I felt like it was just a little bit like annoying that we kept switching. And it's not even per chapter. Like, even within a chapter, we'll hear this person and then goes to that person. So it's like small sections that we're switching between all 4 people, and it's, you know, a bit much sometimes. So, but other than that, great book. Will keep you guessing. I would definitely recommend it. There are sequels to the book, at least one that I know of. I will definitely read it. Not right now. Again, I'm not like running to buy it, and from what I've heard, it's not the same characters. It's like kind of like, and this story ends, so it doesn't necessarily have to be. But yeah, that's definitely something I would consider pursuing the rest of the series. So that being said, that was what I've read in January. What I'm hoping to get out of BookTube is I want to put it out there, my recommendations, if you feel like you have the same taste as me, if you're reading the same genres I'm reading, hopefully that will give you some suggestions on books. And I really hope people comment, and now that you know what I like and stuff that I've read and authors that I like, and maybe give me some suggestions of, oh, if you read this, you might really like this. And so I would love to, do that. I tend to kind of stick to what I like in terms of authors. So not that I don't read new ones. I read a bunch of new ones that I hadn't read before. But when I go into a bookstore, I'm heading right for Frida McFadden right now, or I'm heading right for Colleen Hoover, or whatever it is, Leanne Moriarty, so Harlan Coben. So I feel like I tend to do that. So if there's like a really great person that I'm missing out on, I'd like to know about it. So if you have any suggestions, just let me know. And hopefully I will post a video every month with what I've read that month. And that's pretty much it. So that was what I picked out to read in January. And I will see you at the end of February. Thanks for watching. Bye.